Today, I'm here with Bonnie Divina Maa. Bonnie is a multidimensional healer, soul guide, psychedelic integration specialist, singer, songwriter, and author. She spent 15 years as a registered nurse while studying yoga, shamanism, and other ancient spiritual traditions, as well as Western modalities for healing. She's lived and worked in many places, learning from indigenous wisdom keepers and enlightened beings. Her work, centered around helping people remember who they are, focuses on trauma resolution, shadow work, emotional regulation, and ascension. She recently published a memoir, The Place Beyond the Story, a spiritual adventure about her breakdown/breakthrough in 2012 and the following spiritual awakening. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hey, Abby, it's so great to be here with you.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. We are so aligned just reading your bio, helping people remember who they are, which I really, I had a client say that to me. You should change your tag. It's you help people remember what they forgot. And it's so much about intuition. So let's start. I'd love to start by, I know you have this beautiful book that you just put out, and tell us a little bit about what brought you to this work, which I have a feeling has to do with the breakdown/breakthrough.
Yes, absolutely. All intertwined there. So as you said, prior to doing the work that I do now, I worked as a registered nurse for about 15 years, primarily in emergency medicine and critical care. And I also married a chef and got into the restaurant business with him. So I was doing both of those at the same time. That's a lot. One of those is enough on its own.
Yes.
And two at the same time, coupled with a lot of marriage issues and things preceding that, did indeed lead to what I call my breakthrough in 2012, which was actually a really special time, right? That year of 2012. But when I talk to a lot of people, they say, oh, a lot happened for me in 2012 as well. That was a very significant time. So what that breakdown looked like was, of course, a dissolution of my marriage, leaving the restaurant business, going into a psychiatric unit for a little while, and coming out the other side of that with now a certain amount of clarity moving forward that basically okay, I need help. I cannot do this alone. And of course, in the allopathic world and in the psychiatric unit, the main focus is going to be on pharmaceuticals. And that was the main focus in that unit. What pharmaceuticals can we get you on that will stabilize you? And then we can do outpatient therapy. And I got a sense right away when I was in there that this is not going to be the thing. This is not going to do it for me. I tried many antidepressants in the past, and I can see, of course, where they do have their benefits. I'm not against these things at all. When they're needed. Yet I knew at this point, something else was happening, right? That the depression that I was experiencing and this disconnection went so much deeper. And we can liken it to what we might call the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
Where we have all of these symptoms. We can feel very depressed, disconnected, lonely, and sort of like we're swimming around in an abyss with nothing to hold on to, no foundation.
Been there, yep.
Yeah. It's all part of the wonderful awakening that we get to experience. I think it's an essential part of it. So I had that experience. I wouldn't have been able to put those exact words to it at the time. Yet I knew that the healing that I needed went way deeper than anything that I had experienced before in trying to heal. And also, it was my divine time. I talk about that often with people, right? Sometimes our soul has this divine timing.
Mm-hmm.
And if we've been doing a really good job prior to that of getting our tools and, and using those tools and having our resources and, converting our knowledge into wisdom, then maybe our divine timing with certain periods of awakening maybe it can be really smooth and fun. That can happen. And if we're just don't have any of those things yet, it can be pretty rocky. And mine certainly was. So when I got out of the psychiatric unit, things started to happen very, very quickly. It was like the marriage and the restaurant was kind of ripped away from me. And I had this opportunity to take a 12-week leave from my job in the emergency room. I told my boss, I said, this is going to be my rebirth. I'm not pregnant, probably not going to have a baby anytime soon, maybe never. So I'm taking my 12 weeks for my birth. It's my rebirth. And I was fortunate enough to receive that. And then many chance things that happened afterwards. One was finding this, what's called a Bhakti Yoga retreat, which is a type of yoga that's called the yoga of love and devotion. We don't have any postures in this specific type of yoga. It's one of the main elements is called kirtan, or call and response chanting. And I had experienced some of that not too long before. And I thought, oh, I really love this. Like, this is like going to church. This feels really, really good. So I decided to go on this retreat, and shortly thereafter had a vision of this man that I had briefly kind of noticed. His photo was up on the altar, and I was meditating, and all of a sudden, just here he is, like right in my face. And his name is Neem Karoli Baba. Sometimes we know him as Maharaji. And he's been a guru to many people. Ram Dass would be probably one of the most well-known. And so there he was, coming to me in a vision and telling me to laugh. So I thought, okay, well, this is very interesting. I had to ask some friends, like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Is he alive? Is he dead? Like, what's going on here? And so I started to now connect with him and really take this word to heart. So I decided I'm going to Google laughter, Hudson Valley. That was that first intuitive hit. It's like that voice comes in, right? And just says, do this thing,
Well, but you trusted before that, like you, even just having that vision come in, you trusted that this was from another realm, something was happening, and you were like all in. It wasn't like you didn't think that was crazy or what was, or forget it or whatever. You were like, no, this is meant for me.
I was all in. When, and when you have an experience like I have, it's so real. I'll say that after he came in, I then walked around with him for about 3 hours laughing. And it was like he was as real as could be. And I'm sure that, I look like the crazy woman just walking down the street, laughing and talking to the sky. And we're just going along and, having a grand old time. Yeah. Neem Karoli Baba said, laugh. And so I got this intuitive hit. Well, let's just Google, see what happens. And lo and behold, I found an ashram that was very, very close to me. And that became my home, my people, the roadmap for the spiritual path. I was introduced to so many things that I had little inklings of, but now had the opportunity to go really deep with. And so I was right there at the ashram, pretty much living there, except going home to sleep, but there all day, every day. And that then led me to some other conscious festivals or spiritual festivals where I kept having these chance meetings. Like, here it is. The intuition comes up. It says, go talk to that guy over there. He looks interesting, So I do. Introduce myself. We have like a 10-minute conversation. And the next thing I know, I have now an invitation to experience the sacred medicine we know as ayahuasca, which was a very profound experience for me. And I would say, if we're going to talk about sacred medicines for a minute, you might not want to do it the way I did it. Which is to just say, don't even really know what this is. Never heard of it. Don't even really know how to pronounce it.
Oh my God.
But it feels right. It feels right.
Yeah.
And everything was aligned in a way that it was like, well, this just feels so smooth and effortless. And so it was like there were many forces now that were conspiring, right? Spirits coming through in different ways, coming through Neem Karoli Baba, coming through all of the teachings at the ashram, coming through ayahuasca. And then I fell in love, met somebody who was about to take this epic journey, didn't know exactly where he'd be going, didn't know exactly when he was coming back, and was there in this very quiet moment of stillness. I get a lot of meditation done in the bathtub. It's one of my favorite places to get really quiet and still. And all of a sudden, here comes what I call in my book, the something voice. It's the something voice. The something told me. I sit right up because something said, sell your stuff. Get out of here. There's no reason to stay. Go. And so I called him up and said, how would you feel about me coming along?
Wow.
It all flowed very beautifully. So from like the breakdown breakthrough, which happened in May, I was now on a plane to Southeast Asia by January.
Wow. Wow.
After that, there was a lot of learning that came in through that particular relationship. And then I now had the opportunity to go and travel on my own, traveling solo in India. So I had this 13-month journey abroad. And during that time, I allowed the something voice to guide me. Something would tell me, go here, do that, go here. Or I'd meet somebody, have a very synchronistic meeting. I met somebody along the way who traveled with his yoga mat and did Thai massage. And he would just travel around to different places, make a little money. I said, oh, well, that seems like a really cool thing to do. Let me go to Thailand and learn Thai massage. Go to Nepal and learn sound healing. So I was learning all of these modalities for healing, as well as receiving so many spiritual teachings from different enlightened beings. And all of that wove this tapestry that helped me to remember who I am beyond all of these things I think I am. And from there, all of those things started to take root and led down the road to what I do now, which has elements of all of those original modalities, all of those original teachings that I received.
Yes. Dive a little bit into this. And I was just interviewing Dr. Teresa Bullard, and, we were talking about how we've been conditioned, through science. And honestly, I was at a conference with earlier this year, which will be last year by the time this is aired, but where I think maybe the idea for this podcast was germinated with this sense of, with all the technology, we're getting smarter, but we're not getting any wiser. And where is that wisdom and inner wisdom? The work and breakdowns and breakthroughs I've had in my life, really wanting to bring this message and calling it the Intuition Incubator, because we have gotten so separated that we do need to incubate again to get to that. I think you had a massive, dark night of the soul. I had a massive dark night of the soul. Oftentimes, sometimes you can connect with that just in a moment because things are so bad, but you don't have to have that, right? I like to think we're fortunate enough to have had that, but there's other ways that we need to connect to that. And this idea of remembering who you are is something that I think so many of us we just defer. Well, what I need, or right? It goes back to your experience in the inpatient unit, which I too worked in emergency rooms and inpatient units as a psychiatric social worker. And, there's lots of deferring going on. What does the doctor think? So tell us about, what does that mean, remembering who you are?
I think it means something different at every step that we take in the journey here as a soul. And the embodiment of that truth is also integral to that remembering. Like when we think about this word, I like the RE words a lot, right? Remembering, reconnecting, rewiring, remembering. It's like, and we think about perhaps if we've had a dark night of the soul, or we've had some sort of a trauma. In shamanism, we might call it soul fragmentation, right? Kind of like shatter. We're dismembered. And then all of the pieces start to come back together. We're remembering. And it's coming back together in a different way. We're having a different experience now of who we are. And who we are, the story of who we are changes, right? So when we're really in the 3D world and we're just doing that and not taking too much of a zoom out perspective, of course, most people, if you ask, who are you? They'll tell you what they do. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, whatever it is. Okay, well, you told me what you do. And it's not all of what we do, of course. But it's a lot of what we focus on here. That's kind of our programming and our conditioning in this particular reality that we live in here. So now we start to be able to remove layers of these ego identities, who we think we are, as Ram Dass would say. Bonnie the nurse, Bonnie the daughter, Bonnie the ex-wife, and perhaps those stories start to change. Spiritual seeker, child of God, child of Mother Earth, lover of souls, can be, those roles can change even into starseed, light worker. And so some of them start to have like higher vibration, right? And they have a little bit more of that spiritual quality to them. Cognitively, if we've received a lot of different spiritual teachings, we might understand, well, I'm a soul. I'm here having a human experience. I am loving awareness. That's one of my favorite words. Ram Dass has been a big teacher for me. And that's what resonates with me probably more than anything, right? I'm loving awareness. So we can, or even I'm God, right? As above, so below. I always say that, right? God out here, God in here. And we might cognitively understand a lot of these things, yet they might not be fully embodied. We might have moments, say like in an ayahuasca ceremony or a psilocybin journey where bing, now all of a sudden, all of the filters have been removed, all of the ego layers have been removed, and we now have this experience of ourselves as source, oneness, as infinite love. And then we bring that back, and that creates a little bit of a shift. Maybe now we're starting to see a little bit more through the eyes of our soul self. It's a little bit more embodied. And every time we do that, we're remembering. One of the medicines that I've worked with quite a bit in Mexico with my teacher, one of my teachers there, is a medicine called Bufo that's been made pretty popular these days with certain people. And we call Bufo like the rocket ship to God because number one, it's inhaled. So it's very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always happen. Yet, if we're going to have an experience of like an ego death, it can happen in Bufo and it can happen very quickly. And we can rocket ship into this place of source oneness and infinite immeasurable love and the everything and the no thing. And we can even look down and we can see our body and our house. And there's my ego self down there. But I'm now here, I'm immersed in this place. And it is, in essence, that death experience. I always say, like, one of the entheogens' main purposes is to teach us how to die. And one of my teachers, Bhagavan Das, used to say this also, right? About meditation. Meditation teaches us how to die, how to leave the body. Who are we when we leave this body? Who are we when we're no longer any of the things that we do here? When we're no longer any of our beliefs, our roles? Who are we? So remembering that can happen in many ways. The sacred medicines, the entheogens have been a huge part of that experience for me, as have other modalities such as breath work, meditation, sound, even sound healing, kirtan. There's many things that can take us there and help us experience our pure essence, which is joy, which is love, which is light. And so coming here, kind of like I would say my new tagline is beyond remembering who we are is learning how to be both fully human and fully divine.
Yes. I think that is the goal, right?
How do we do both?
How do we do both? Yeah. I mean, and there's so many people that I know who do all the divine work, but they're not able to sort of manage their humanity. They can't really be honest about the personality parts that don't feel very lovingly aware. They don't act lovingly aware. And then it turns into this like shame cycle, I don't know, and so how do you manage, because that's part of humanity. That's part, you can't bypass it. You can't You can't bypass it. One of the things that I'm thinking as you're talking that is assumed, and I think it's assumed obviously by you and by me and most of the people I have on this show, but maybe not necessarily by all of the audience, is this idea that what you're seeing when you're on those medicines is more of the truth than what you're seeing when you're not, right? Because when when I was in college or whatever, I'll say me because I'm probably a little older than you, I don't know. But when I was in college, doing a psilocybin thing was just about having a trip, or whatnot. And there was absolutely no, and I only did it once, I think back then, and there was no belief anywhere in my belief system or my knowledge system that was anything other than just, having a good time and seeing some crazy things, that was that. Oh, that was nuts. That was wild, right? Now, it's so much more in the mainstream that no, actually, when we're able to transcend the ego and get back to those feelings of oneness and whatnot, that is actually more of who we really are, that this is Earth School. We're on a playground here in a human body, having a human experience, the soul having a human experience. And so I just wanted to point that out because I think, some listeners might be like, what is she talking about? Like, she just had why is she assuming that whatever crazy thing happened is more valid than what's happening with our five senses here.
Right. Yeah. So many of my teachers will say that the experience of something is going to be what gives us that knowing. Of course, cognitive dissonance can come in. When I work with people who've experienced certain medicines and they've experienced that soul self, they can come back and then wonder, was this all real? Was that just my imagination? Right. Which, of course, once we start doing quantum level work, we understand, well, our imagination is actually the most real and it's the most powerful tool that we have.
Right.
And, so because of our programming and our conditioning, that cognitive dissonance can come in and we can just think like, oh, well, that was just some silly dream. This really here, this is what's real. I can touch this. I can feel this. I can smell this. So this is what's real. And the experience of that, while our mind might come back on board and start to doubt it, it plants a seed. And I think in time, we have enough of these experiences that we begin to understand, okay, well, whether it be meditation or breath work or, a shamanic journey or medicine work, sacred medicine work, I'm getting a lot of the same messages. I'm getting a lot of the same experience. The same experience that somebody might describe with an NDE, right? Like a near-death experience. Well, there was light and there was fractals and it felt very peaceful and there was a lot of love there. So at some point, we might believe that this is true. I now believe that I, as a soul, leave this body and this human experience, that I continue to exist in some form, and that this form is what I would say light, love, joy, and the peace that passes all understanding. The more experiences that we have, that belief can now start to transition to a knowing. One of my favorite things, a friend gave me a postcard like years ago, and I held on to it, and I didn't really get it at the time, but I'm so glad I held on to it because I get it now. And that is, I would rather have a mind that is open to awe and wonder rather than being closed by belief. Part of becoming a fully enlightened, self-realized being is letting go of every single belief we've ever had and residing in knowing. Let's say capital K, knowing. It's not something that we can smell or taste or feel or see. That knowing, though, is very, very real. When we talk about like the different clairs, the different gifts that we might have. Claircognizance, we see it like it's on a movie. Clairsentience, we feel it somewhere in our body.
Yeah.
I've met clairvoyance is what we, when we see it.
Yeah.
Claircognizance, it's a knowing. How do you know? I don't know. I just know. I just know.
Yeah.
And so part of that remembering and that embodiment of who we truly are transfers into this knowing. We just know it. And while in our humanness, we might forget it for a moment or two, or some days, or maybe weeks, or even months.
Well, yeah, I kind of look at it the other way around. I look at it, the human experience is one in which there's only moments in which you remember. It's really most of the time that you've forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that remembering and the embodiment is now we're just having the experience of that deeper knowing of self. And while it might not be there in our conscious brain, in our mind, every moment of like, oh, I'm a soul, I'm a soul, I'm a soul, I'm loving awareness, I'm loving awareness. How we show up in the world, how we show up for ourselves, how we see others, our capacity for compassion, for empathy, for being able to co-create, to write our own story, to work in destiny lines, all of those things become so much more effortless. They're just becoming now who we are. So it's like, I think that even when, that idea of remembering, where we're every time we shatter in some way, we're putting the pieces back together, and we're perhaps even what we call like downloading or uploading our divine soul blueprint. We're becoming more of that. It's not like we're in every moment thinking about it, like, oh, right, I'm just a soul here having a human experience.
No, quite
But
the
how we experience humanity there's a shift with that. And that continues to shift as we remember and embody more, as we continue to evolve. And then we can see sometimes the examples of that in fully self-realized or fully enlightened beings who have now completely merged those two things. There's no more separation between them and source, and there's no more separation between the human experience and the divine experience. They've completely merged, and they just show up as that.
Right. And I always like to, say for the listeners, like, this is Buddha we're talking about. Like, this is not your everyday human. This is not what we're trying to achieve. I mean, we can try, but it's not, going to happen, right? We're going to have these moments of where everything is clear, and most of the moments are not going to be, but we're going to keep striving to evolve, right? I mean, evolution, it's not I've evolved, it's I'm evolving.
I'm evolving.
I like to say that because I think that people can get very discouraged or think that that's what they're going for. And so then every time their human part comes up or their ego comes up, it's like, well, and then they have their habit of beating themselves up or getting irritated or angry or feeling further from source. And of course, that habit of that voice, is just further and further separating us from who we really are.
Yeah. Very common symptom of ascension, I would say. Something that I go through a lot with people. And I would say that as we're enlightening and we're remembering, when we have those very, very human moments where it feels like we've just forgotten everything that we ever learned, the fact that we've come to a certain place now in our soul evolution in this human experience allows us now to give ourselves grace for that. So whereas we might have at one point really beat ourselves up for it, or hidden away in shame and embarrassment because of it, we can get to that point where I'm just like, I do it a lot. I'm like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right. We did that.
Yep. Might have to do a little cleaning up. Might have to own it. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Whatever. But that's all right.
Yeah. And that's part of enlightening. And for me, a lot of these words are interchangeable: ascending, enlightening, remembering. We're raising our vibration.
And I like the word enlightening in that context because it is lightening. It is literally lightening to be able to do that. I mean, I was on a walk today and I was thinking about being both grounded and weightless at the same time, rooted in the knowing, rooted in like, I just know this, and the weightlessness that creates.
Yeah.
Right. The mind is relaxed, the body's relaxed. There's a weightlessness in the rootedness.
Yes, very high vibration. So ascension or enlightening is all about raising our vibration. And we have what I call the heavies, and the heaviest of the heavies, which would be shame, guilt, fear, anger, right? Some of these are the heaviest of the heaviest. Boy, do they really weigh us down. And as we're healing and we're feeling, now we're starting to release some of these heavies, thereby just uncovering what's already there, right? What we've always been, which is that joy, which is that light, which is that love, which are now very high vibrations. And so ascension or enlightenment, sometimes people think, well, I'm just going to like zoom off like a balloon, just kind of like be way up here somewhere. Well, we can do that too sometimes for a while. I've been there. I was like really out of my body for a few months at a time, doing some, I don't know, big reorganization. But the ascension in human realm means now to be a higher vibration and yet be in this body, in this grounded body, in this earth realm. And that enlightenment process is all about truly becoming lighter. And we have measured now the emotions, right? We've seen like they actually have energetic weight. And when we release a certain heavy emotion, we become lighter, both physically and energetically, right? Vibrationally, we're becoming lighter. I've had the opportunity of meeting some fully enlightened beings or some highly, highly enlightened beings who are here in a human body, having a human experience. And we don't want to fall into the comparison trap with that, because once we meet one, we're like, I got a long way to go. Right?
Yeah.
To be just, complete equanimous bliss in every single moment, no matter what. That certainly is the goal. Why not enjoy the journey of just being wherever we're at? And that is, I would say, a very common pitfall that I see over and over in spiritual communities is people who are like in a race for the prize.
Yeah.
I want to get enlightened. I want to get enlightened. I want to get enlightened. I don't want to come back here. That's another one I hear. I don't want to come back here to this terrible place we call Earth. Yeah. Well, if that's how you feel when you leave, you're probably coming back.
Yeah, right. You haven't finished yet. Yeah. And I think it's such an important point, because there is so much of that. And, geez, I mean, that's how we're wired, right? To want the quick fix, to want it done, to want it figured out. And, it's having an appreciation too that every soul is here to do something different. I remember, when that finally sunk in for me, and it feels like it wasn't even that long ago, like when you stop comparing yourself. And I remember hearing Sadhguru say once, an oak tree is not going to be a blade of grass. And, a blade of grass can't be an elephant. I don't know what ones he used exactly, but their job is to be the best oak tree it can be. This blade of grass is to be the best blade of grass it can be. Right. And so there is no reason to compare, right? Like it's when you think about it, it is so insane. Michael Klinger talks about it as well. It's so ridiculous. Like, why would I compare my journey to your journey? You are totally your own. Your soul came down and has its own soul contracts, and mine came down and had mine. And so maybe, you don't have psoriasis or whatever, and I do, or I have something that you don't, or vice versa.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It literally has nothing to do. And yet we're just so trained to look over there and say, I want to be a mango tree. That looks well, how could I be a mango? I'm not a mango tree. I'm a human, like, how could I do that?
Yeah. And I'm me.
And I'm me.
And I'm going to be the best me
and I'm
that I can be.
Yeah.
With the understanding that while maybe all of us don't, become like a, super famous or, highly enlightened being, that we have our own unique, very important, very essential qualities and path that is absolutely exactly what is needed for the whole, for the collective.
Speak to this for a minute, for the collective, and also speak to like what your soul is doing, like past lives and what needs to happen. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what is your ability to ascend in any given lifetime?
Well, what is our ability to ascend, to fully enlighten?
Or just what is meant in that lifetime?
Right. Or what is meant in that particular lifetime?
Not always necessarily going to happen in one lifetime.
Yeah. And it's not linear.
It's not linear.
It's not linear. And so, if we think about, all right, if we're all coming here to Earth School in this drama that happens here, we're going to play a certain role, and we're in an Earth School of duality. That means that somebody has to be the victim, somebody has to be the perpetrator, somebody has to be the good guy, somebody has to be the bad guy. There's got to be a villain. There's got to, we all have all of these different roles that all need to be played here.
And why do we all have to, why do there need to be so many roles?
Right. Why duality would be the question then, right? Because we're coming here to master duality, and somehow through mastering duality, we're learning what we're not, we're learning what we are, and we're evolving our soul through this mastership of duality. And in duality, there's going to be the polarities, and there's going to be everything in that spectrum, right? That we're going to experience all of them. And in coming to a place where we're learning as much about what we're not as what we are, we've got to now play roles where we're going to experience unworthiness. We're going to experience extreme rage that might make us do terrible things. We're going to experience being on the other end of those things as a victim. We've got to come, and everybody has a role to play, right? And it's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to come and like play Ram Dass? Like, I want that one.
Yeah.
I want that one. Like, that one seems fun. I'd like that.
Yeah, I don't want to take Aaron Hernandez's role. I'd rather take Ram Dass.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But somebody's got to take the role.
Yeah, somebody's got to take the role. And it's actually said that it's the greatest souls that often take the roles of the greatest villains and the greatest perpetrators, because the amount of hatred that will continue to be directed at them, even long after they're gone, at that incarnation, is tremendous.
So that's interesting. Let's unpack that for a minute. So let's take Hitler as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. So the amount of hatred that is being directed at Hitler, you're saying, is performing an important function. And what is that?
Well, then we have to ask, like, why would we come here to experience even that kind of hatred? I would guess, right? Like, why does somebody need to come play a role where they're going to do terrible things that are going to destroy millions and millions and generations to come, right, of lives, that now we're going to feel so much hatred for this person, for this incarnation, that now we get super weighed down. And this experience of that much hatred, I guess, is necessary for us also to experience the opposite of that, which would be that much more love, that much more compassion. If we can learn to be in loving awareness, and of course, not excusing any terrible things that happen. Right. It's not about that.
Right. Yeah.
But to actually be able to have compassion for the villain, for somebody who does horrible, horrible things. Wow. What kind of growth and evolution are we talking about now? That's incredibly expansive. And if we're talking about a universe that's, in the state of constant expansion, thereby we also need to be in expansion to kind of keep up and keep it all going. Well, I don't know, honestly, of any other greater challenge or greater way to expand. I'm sure there's a few, but this is a really good one, of learning how to love and have compassion for somebody, whether it be in our own life, or maybe it's a historical figure, or maybe it's the president or whoever it is, that we can transform that hatred into love and compassion.
Yeah. And, it's such an interesting conversation. And I love that you made the point about, it's not about saying that you're excusing it, because that's where a lot of people go. And I think that's a buffer that we throw up to not have to really look at ourselves. Right. I guess you're just saying I should, just anybody can do anything. I'll just whatever. Right. And that's just a way of throwing up a defense mechanism, so I don't have to look at the parts of myself that aren't willing to forgive, that aren't willing to embody love, right? And I think and we've been conditioned this way to say duality, right? There are good people, there are bad. I have a whole Monday Muse on there are no good or bad people. There's good people, there's bad people. Our mind is developed to just judge everything. Good and bad, right and wrong. And to your point, without these people, without Hitler, without the murderer, without the, Sue Morter tells the story really well about, the contract that we make before we come down here. And maybe that contract is, the soul, the last time they were around, they were 90 years old before they were on their deathbed, before they experienced forgiveness. And they said, that was so amazing. When I go back the next time, I want to experience that sooner in my life. And that might mean that I might have to have a child who's killed by a drunk driver, or something might have to happen in my life so that I can experience this joy. And we make that contract, we completely forget on our way down what we were trying to accomplish. Back to your remembering, right? There's so much more than we're taught to really believe and think.
Yeah. I call it the zoom out perspective. And that's part of being both fully human and fully divine. So if we're going to zoom in and see some of the horrible atrocities that are taking place, well, of course, our humanness says, absolutely no, we need to put a stop to this.
Right.
We need to do better.
Right.
We need to incarcerate that person, bring people to justice, whatever. And of course we do. Of course.
Yeah.
That's a part of being in this human experience, where we're growing as a human collective, trying to do better. And then at the same time, we're having that zoom out perspective that now sees it through the eyes of loving awareness, through the eyes of the soul self, that sees it, okay, well, yes, this is horrible. And my human part is feeling this, and it's terrible, and I also get it. I also see, and this is a big one that's really hard for people to grasp. And I've only really got it in moments that this too is love. It's like when we can get to that place where we're in that zoom out perspective, and we're seeing it through loving awareness, and we're seeing the human drama play out, and we can see that even this is love, because ultimately, as a soul collective, it's helping us to evolve. And that is a very, very difficult thing for so many of us to grasp.
Yeah.
And it has come to me in really random times. Like, I just remember, like, one time I was just walking down the hallway here. And all of a sudden it would hit me. I was like, right.
Yeah.
This too is love.
Right.
It is all light and love, because in the human experience, especially now with bypassing it, it's not all light and love. It's not, well, I get it. Yeah, it's not, except it is.
Right. Exactly. It's not, you can intellectually understand it and function from that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be able to, in when we're going through all of these things, whether it be on the more collective level or in our individual experience, to be able to experience the humanity of that. And then also at the same time, be able to see it from the zoom out perspective and to have that knowing that, yeah, this is all part of it, right? This is what we've come here to do. This is a part of the drama. This is a part of the evolution. This is all part of the divine plan.
Which is why I always say too, it's like, even if you don't, like, let's say you have no belief that, you don't believe any of that, but you have something horrible happen in your life. Well, why not try and adopt that? Or like, why not choose that belief? Because it's going to make your existence that much lighter. It's going to make it that much better, you know?
Absolutely.
And of course, there are all kinds of reasons why we don't choose that. But, but when people are in super pain, that zoom out, perspective that you're calling it can be such a salve to deep, deep, painful things that happen in the human experience.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about getting out of victim consciousness.
Yeah.
Right? Where it happened to me. This thing happened to me. And I had no choice. And now XYZ, and this is why I am the way I am. When we start to now do the deeper work with that, the language shifts, right? It happened for me. And on some level, I did choose it.
Right. Maybe before I realized it, but I chose it.
Right.
Some part of me chose it.
Yeah. And in finding the silver linings then.
Right.
Of course, as we go through, I know when I'm doing trauma work with people, when we're starting to get into the resolution of that, that's one of the things that we're going to definitely address. We're going to keep coming back to it. What are the silver linings here? What did you learn?
Exactly. Yeah.
How has it changed you? Are you more compassionate? Are you more wise?
Or what's the opportunity as you move through this to become more compassionate, more wise, right? Like a lot of times when I'm working with people, the opportunity is, wow, I need to learn to be more empathic to myself and therefore to other people. And what would change in my life if I were? Well, it wouldn't just change this situation. It would change everything. Change my relationships. It would change my business. It would change the way I am with my kids. So would that make this horrible thing that's happening worth it? If it were the impetus, if it were the catalyst to create that change in you, my God, yeah, that would be worth it. If I learned all of that and I was able to change all of that and bring this into my life as a result, yeah, that's worth it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. The hour just literally flew by.
Oh my goodness.
It literally flew by. Tell us before we have to go, and I will have the links to your book and everything in the show notes, but who's your book for? Tell us who's going to really, yes, please.
Here we
Place
go.
Beyond the Story, a spiritual adventure.
Yeah. Well,
it's beautiful.
Thank you. What I'm finding is that this book resonates with so many people in different ways. So some people have told me, well, now that I saw that you went through all of these terrible things and that now you're here, and you're having so much of a better human experience, that really gives me hope. And for some people that even that know me, they say, well, if Bonnie was back there feeling that way and having all of these thoughts and going through all of that stuff, and that's what I'm going through, that means that I can also, have now maybe a little bit of a, higher vibrational experience in this human suit, and people who are on the spiritual path. This one in particular is a lot. It's I would say more of an introduction for some people, even though I'm discussing some of the very big concepts in there that we've talked about today. I really try as best I can to step people through a lot of the concepts as I'm going through my own journey learning about them. But I would say also for people who are maybe even really far down the spiritual path, even like way further than me down the spiritual path, they can also read this book and have a lot of like maybe even nostalgia about, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I went there. So there's that. And then there's also the whole travel aspect. So it is also a travel log. Oh, okay. So for people that really love travel and like to experience all of these off the beaten path places where I went and have that epic travel journey and along with travel tips. That's also in there. So it's like part memoir, part travel guide, part spiritual guide. I just now actually found out right before we got on the call that I won a book award, a gold medal for in the travel area.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That is so exciting.
So it's got a little something in there for everybody. For some people, what resonated the most was the heartache that I went through or the difficult challenges. For other people, it was the fascinating journey that I took. For other people, it's the spiritual awakening process. I think all in all, it's just a really fun page turner. That's very raw, very authentic. I'm bringing in so many different concepts because I experienced so much along the journey, right? Everything from Tantra, sacred sexuality, sound healing, yoga, Thai massage, different spiritual traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, all these people that I meet along the way, Islam. Like there's a lot that gets introduced just because of the journey that I'm on. But ultimately, this book is about remembering who we are. It is about my breakthrough that appears to be a breakdown and is a breakthrough, which helps me break through to now finally have at least that cognitive awareness that I am more than my stories.
Which I think is, so will resonate with so many. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's important to know, right? Like you didn't start here. You started in a hospital room, like locked up.
Literally not able to go, not able to leave.
Right.
Yeah, locked up.
Locked up. Yeah. Yeah. What a beautiful story. So yes, thank you so much for being here. One last question. What do you want people to know more than anything? If you could impart some piece of advice, some piece of wisdom that you want people to know.
Wow. I would just want to say that you are a beautiful light. You are love. You are truth. You are joy. You are exactly where you are needed in this sacred recipe. And I love you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Abby.